Hello, seniors! I'm glad you're still here listening to an exciting lesson related to life science. I'm Mom De La Sorna and I'll be presenting to you today's amazing lesson. Are you excited? So do I. So let's make the most out of our class time. Learn while having fun. In a vast universe that we have only begun to explore. So far, we only know that the only planet that has life is Earth. Furthermore, biochemical, genetic, and metabolic similarities among the Earth's species imply that all evolved from a common ancestor that lived a billion years ago. There are many things that confuse the people, like what properties of the ancient Earth allowed life to arise, survive, and diversify. And could this possibly occur in the other planets? This module will introduce the evidences of the past, which will include the people who worked on theories and made some discoveries out of their works and studies. This is aimed at introducing the historical development of the concept of life and the origin of the first life forms, with unifying themes in the study of life. You will be able to know also the origin of the universe and Earth through scientific explanation that provides evidences. This chapter will also allow you to value life by taking good care of all beings, humans, plants, and animals. Seniors, our lesson today, Introduction to Life Science. How do we define life? We simply describe life as easy as it is recognized to be, but often much harder to define it. Animals and plants are organisms that we consider to have life, and what is common with these two is that both are made up of cells, which can be unicellular or multicellular depending to which descendant an organism belongs. There are different characteristics of life, and these are nutrition, reproduction, excretion, growth, movement, respiration, and sensitivity. Several attempts have been made from time to time to explain on the origin of the earth and how life really began. As a result, people have come up with different theories providing their own explanation on the possible mechanism on the origin of life. This chapter is your introduction to a slice through time. We begin with Earth's formation and move on to life's chemical origins and the evolution of traits present in modern eukaryotes. There were many theories inferred by different scientists on the origin of the universe. Few of these are the theory of special creation, theory of spontaneous generation, theory of biogenesis, theory of biochemical evolution, theory of panspermia, and deep-sea hydrothermal vent theory. These theories may have or may have not scientific basis. Some believe that organisms were put to earth by some divine forces, according to Kanoy 2016, while others say that life did not originate from Earth but from different and other celestial bodies. Among the scientists, the most accepted theory is that life came from the lifeless matter. All living things are made up of cells. Some are unicellular and some are multicellular. Unicellular organisms that are mostly known are paramecium, amoeba, bacteria, and yeast. The multicellular cells include animal and plant cells, and the human body, and germ cell. Given what scientists know about relationships among modern species, most assume that this common ancestor was prokaryotic, meaning it did not have a nucleus. There was a scarcity of oxygen during the early Earth's atmosphere, so the ancestral cell must also have been anaerobic, meaning capable of living without oxygen. What are the evidences to prove such a statement? Looking for and finding signs of early cells poses a challenge. Cells are microscopic and cannot be seen through our naked eye, and is difficult to fossilize. Furthermore, few ancient rocks that could hold early fossils still exist. Tectonic plate movements have destroyed nearly all rocks older than about 4 million years. Most slightly younger rocks have been heated that destroy traces of biological material. Structures formed by non-biological mechanisms sometimes resemble fossils. To avoid mistakes on accepting materials like genuine fossils, scientists repeatedly analyze purported or not definitely true or real fossil finds, and they often question one another's conclusion. The divergence that separated the two prokaryotic domains, or the bacteria and archaea, occurred rarely in the history of life, and no fossils from before this divergence have been discovered. It has been studied that the first form of life is believed to have appeared 3.5 billion years ago. Paleontologists, or the scientists who study fossils, found microscopic living cells known as microfossils in rocks that formed 3.5 billion years ago after Earth cooled and solidified using radioisotope dating, which uses radioactive materials such as the radioactive components of potassium argon. The microfossils filaments found in Western Australia resemble chains of modern photosynthetic bacteria, and the rocks in which they occur are thought to be remains of ancient stromatolites, which are mounded, layered structure that forms in shallow, sunlit water when a mat of photosynthetic bacteria traps minerals and sediment. These stromatolites increase in size over time as new layers form over the old. These organisms have been so abundant 1.25 billion years ago and were common worldwide. Many types of bacteria carry out photosynthesis, but only one group, the cyanobacteria, do so by an oxygen-producing pathway. The microfossils of cyanobacteria were among the easiest to recognize. The forms of these organisms remained the same and left chemical fossils in the form of broken products from pigments. The first microfossil that showed remains of organisms with differences in structure and characteristics was seen 1.5 billion years ago on the rocks. They are bigger compared to bacteria and have internal membranes and thicker wall. These findings marked the beginning of eukaryotic organisms on Earth. The evolution of oxygen-producing photosynthesis in cyanobacteria had started on early life. About 2.5 billion years ago, oxygen released by this bacteria had begun to accumulate in Earth's air and creating a new global selection pressure. Other species considered oxygen as toxic, thus evolved gradually in its absence. How did multicellular organisms evolve? Multicellular organisms are believed to have evolved from unicellular eukaryotes, and until now it is the concept that we believe. Single eukaryotic cells, just like unicellular algae, formed multicellular aggregates through association with another cell producing colonies. From colonial aggregates, the organisms evolved in order to form multicellular organisms through cell specialization. Organisms like protozoans, sponges, and fungi came to being. The soft-bodied animals were the first fossilized animals which were discovered 580 million years. The continuous process of cell specialization brought the emergence of diverse plants and animals, including human beings and including the complex ones. Charles Darwin said that organisms change over time as a result of adaptation to their environment in order to survive. Nucleus is not often preserved during fossilization, but other traits provide evidence that a fossilized cell was eukaryotic. These eukaryotic cells are generally larger than the prokaryotic cells. A cell wall with complex patterns, spines, or spikes probably belonged to a eukaryote. Researchers and scientists also look for biomarkers or substance that occurs only or predominantly in cells of a specific type for each eukaryote, just like the steroids found present only to eukaryotes. Let's watch this video to learn the differences between eukaryotes and prokaryotes.
Cells are the smallest living units of an organism. All cells have three things in common, no matter what type of cell they are. All cells have a cell membrane, which separates the inside of the cell from its environment, cytoplasm, which is a jelly-like fluid, and DNA, which is the cell's genetic material. There are two broad categories of cells. The first category is eukaryotic cells. They have organelles, which include the nucleus and other special parts. Eukaryotic cells are more advanced, complex cells, such as those found in plants and animals. The second category is prokaryotic cells. They don't have a nucleus or membrane-enclosed organelles. They do have genetic material, but it's not contained within a nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are always one-celled or unicellular organisms, such as bacteria. So, what are organelles? Organelle means little organ. Organelles are the specialized parts of a cell that have unique jobs to perform. Let's start with the nucleus, the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains DNA, or genetic material. DNA dictates what the cell is going to do and how it's going to do it. Chromatin is the tangled, spread-out form of DNA found inside the nuclear membrane. When a cell is ready to divide, DNA condenses into structures known as chromosomes. The nucleus also contains a nucleolus, which is a structure where ribosomes are made. After ribosomes leave the nucleus, they will have the important job of synthesizing or making proteins. Outside the nucleus, the ribosomes and the rest of the organelles float around in cytoplasm, which is the jelly-like substance. Ribosomes may wander freely within the cytoplasm or attach to the endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes abbreviated as ER. There are two types of ER. Rough ER has ribosomes attached to it, and smooth ER doesn't have ribosomes attached to it. The endoplasmic reticulum is a membrane-enclosed passageway for transporting materials, such as the proteins synthesized by ribosomes. Proteins and other materials emerge from the endoplasmic reticulum in small vesicles, where the Golgi apparatus, sometimes called the Golgi body, receives them. As proteins move through the Golgi body, they're customized into forms that the cell can use. The Golgi body does this by folding the proteins into usable shapes, or adding other materials onto them, such as lipids or carbohydrates. Vacuoles are sac-like structures that store different materials. Here, in this plant cell, the central vacuole stores water. Going back to the animal cell, you will see an organelle called a lysosome. Lysosomes are the garbage collectors that take in damaged or worn-out cell parts. They are filled with enzymes that break down this cellular debris. The mitochondrion is an organelle that is the powerhouse for both animal and plant cells. During a process called cellular respiration, the mitochondria make ATP molecules that provide the energy for all of the cell's activities. Cells that need more energy have more mitochondria. Meanwhile, the cell maintains its shape through a cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton includes the thread-like microfilaments, which are made of protein, and microtubules, which are thin, hollow tubes. Some organisms, such as plants, that are photoautotrophic, meaning they capture sunlight for energy, have cells with an organelle called a chloroplast. The chloroplast is where photosynthesis happens. It's green because it has a green pigment called chlorophyll. Plant cells also have a cell wall outside of their cell membranes that shape, support, and protect the plant cell. Animal cells never have a cell wall. There are many other unique structures that only some cells have. Here are just a few. In humans, for example, the respiratory tract is lined with cells that have cilia. These are microscopic hair-like projections that can move in waves. This feature helps trap inhaled particles in the air and expels them when you cough. Another unique feature in some cells is flagella. Some bacteria have flagella. A flagellum is like a little tail that can help a cell move or propel itself. The only human cell that has a flagellum is a sperm cell. In summary, remember, eukaryotic cells are plant and animal cells with a nucleus and membrane-enclosed organelles, while prokaryotic cells are unicellular organisms without these things. All cells have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and genetic material. And even though only plant cells have chloroplasts, both plant and animal cells have mitochondria.
Biology is the study of life. Life does not only involve the living things itself, but also includes its deepest characteristics. There are many characteristics of life, and some of these will be discussed. This is an important introduction on how you define a living from a non-living for you to simply know how important life is. There are 7 basic characteristics of life: nutrition, reproduction, excretion, growth, movement, respiration, and sensitivity. Living things take in minerals and food from the environment in order to survive and grow. It is the process of which organisms obtain energy and raw materials from nutrients such as fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Unicellular organisms reproduce by DNA replication and dividing equally as the new cell prepares to form two new cells, while multicellular organisms often reproduce using its gametes in order to form new individuals. When there is reproduction, genes with DNA will pass from generation to generation to ensure that the offspring belong to the same species having similar characteristics. All living things also excrete, but in different ways. Excretion is the result of many chemical reactions happening in cells which they have to remove the waste products which might poison the cells. Excretion is the removal of toxic materials in excess from the organisms. Organisms grow and develop according to its genes that gives instruction that will direct the cellular growth and development, ensure that the offspring will grow up and exhibit many of the same characteristics as its parents. Mitosis and meiosis play an important role in this matter. All living things move. Animals move from one place to another. Plants also move, but not as usually observable than animals. Plants move in different ways in order to grow, and their movement may be so slow that people cannot even recognize. A makahiya leaf being touched is an example of movement through thigmotropism. Respiration is the process in which the energy from the food eaten is being released in all living cells. Organisms break down the food within their cells with a specific process to carry out the following processes. Living things are able to respond to the environment through a stimulus. Irritability is an example. Another example is a living thing's response to light by facing the sun and sweating as our body's response to heat, which is also connected to excretion. That was an amazing lesson, isn't it? I hope you learned a lot in today's topic. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to take care of yourself by staying at home. See you again next time. Bye bye.